There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense.
I've been in a Twitter war.
All of the 7 mountains of society to be taken over.
Those people in the teachers' unions are Marxist, cultural Marxists, often gay.
We're trying to recruit you to tuck your penis.
If you believe in evolution, why don't you just kill people?
I'm like, well then let's go fight. I'll just kick his ass. How's that?
Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review, a podcast from the Colorado Times-Recorder. I'm your host, Heidi Beadle, and today we're back in the Fever Swamp. And every ecosystem has some season out of the year where all the animals come out and they fight for dominance. In the Fever Swamp, that season is election season. Last Thursday, I drove out to Sedalia, Colorado, a little community just east of Castle Rock, to attend the Colorado GOP chair debate. For those of you who aren't quite up to speed on everything that's been going on with the Colorado GOP, basically, it's been kind of a comedy of disaster, right? If we go back to the chair before last, Christy Burton Brown, she was basically voted out because all the kind of radical MAGA folks were upset with what she was doing and didn't like the direction she was taking the party. So they elected Dave Williams. During Dave Williams' tenure, there's been multiple lawsuits, one to take them out of open primaries, and then a number of like intra-party lawsuits. There was what some people call a coup, but there was an effort by some factions of the Colorado GOP to remove Dave Williams and establish a new chair and kind of leadership panel. That was ultimately unsuccessful, but there was a lot of controversy in the GOP over recently adopted practices of endorsing candidates. Williams endorsed a slate of just stellar candidates, right? Janak Joshi, Ron Hanks, none of whom, except for Lauren Boebert, actually made it past the primaries, but that's beside the point, right? So Williams, kind of a controversial figure, lots of battles, all of these things. And so now he is no longer running and they've got to pick somebody else. The potential front runner, some would say, appears to be Darcy Schoening, who is currently the Colorado GOP's Director of Special Initiatives. She was recently interviewed by Kyle Clark. So let's just take a look at a clip from that real quick.
Why then ban people from certain occupations because of your fear of them?
It's not a fear. I don't have a fear of transgender individuals. As a matter of fact, I interact with plenty of them on a daily basis. There's a reporter for one of our local publications that I've always worked well with. It's not a fear. It's that it's a destructive ideology that harms our children. And we as a party, that is one thing that we do agree on, that transgenderism is an ideology. It's not that these people are born this way, and we don't hate them, we don't want to harm them, but we also don't want to contribute to this ongoing ideology.
Now, kind of wild to have someone be like, well, I'm not bigoted against this community because I have a friend or an associate who's a member of that community. And I maybe I'm assuming here, right? I don't know which other transgender local reporter she might be talking about. There's got to be more than just me, I'm sure. But let's just assume that she's talking about me, which is fine, right? And I will agree, right? We have had a pretty good working relationship, right? And I'll be honest, I kind of like Darcy, right? I like Darcy the way gay guys like Liza Minnelli and Kate Bush and Madonna, right? We stan a queen. And Darcy does a lot of things really well, right? She's got a persona. She's got a brand. She has she's very savvy politically and very skilled navigating kind of these political landscapes and doing the things that she's been doing, right? I mean, she's done it well. She is in a position now to be the chair of the party, right? Good for her. Darcy and I actually kind of go way back, right? So I first encountered Darcy in 2020 when I was writing for the Colorado Springs Independent. And she was contributing to this like kind of juicy conservative politics gossip blog called the Colorado Herald, which provided a lot of like COVID-19 conspiracy stuff, but also, gave some good insight in various like political infighting that was going on. And at the time, there was a lot of controversy in the El Paso County GOP over Chair Vicki Tompkins, who, much like Dave Williams, was kind of unpopular, and there was kind of a battle between like the Tompkins faction and the more like kind of moderate establishment Republican faction for power. And if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like Darcy wasn't on the Tompkins side in that one, but that's beside the point, right? So that's kind of how I got to know her. And established my relationship with her as a reporter. And since then, I've kind of followed her career as someone who writes about politics and education and all these various things, right? She got involved in founding the Moms for Liberty chapter. Moms for Liberty was very involved in a variety of school board decisions, school board races, all kinds of school board stuff in El Paso County. And then, she resigned from Moms for Liberty and moved on to this position with the Colorado GOP and has been doing that for the last year or so. So, it's interesting, like, it's important to note, right? Like, there are things that I can appreciate about Darcy, as a person, but I absolutely find a lot of the things that she says and does, kind of... I mean, there's only so many times I could listen to her use the word tranny and just not like kind of glaze over, right? The point I'm making though, right, is that this working relationship is entirely on me and the fact that I'm not, being as outspoken and kind of aggro as maybe I have been in the past, that's the old Heidi. This is the new Heidi. But yeah, definitely have worked with her. Do not give her any kind of pass for these attacks that she's made against trans people and the kind of like insane things that she tends to say as she's like going after trans people and pursuing her political career. So the Colorado GOP debate, right? It was a series set up as kind of like a panel, and they had various questions and asked about various topics. A lot of predictable stuff, right? Just kind of conservative policy, election integrity, how they're going to run the party if they get elected, and school choice, right? Which is obviously an interesting one. Darcy had some interesting things to say about school choice, so let's take a listen.
So school choice, when we talk about school choice in Colorado, as I just mentioned, we've got a hard battle in the legislature. There was a ballot initiative in 2025 for school choice. It failed miserably. So to work on school choice, we've got to go around the state and educate our school boards, educate our localities on what school choice looks like. And in my mind, we also have to get the unaffiliated on our side as far as school choice goes. Without the unaffiliated vote, we're not going to pass any further school choice policies. That said, the indoctrination, the anti-white racism, the BLM agenda, the trans agenda, that can all be removed from our schools while we simultaneously work on school choice. That has been a big sticking point of mine for the last several years. I chaired Moms for Liberty. I formed that organization in El Paso County and then took that fight to the state level and started working as Director of Special Initiatives at the GOP. So all of the school boards across Colorado, I've been going to them and saying, okay, look, let's opt your kids, let's opt your school district out of these mental health assessments. Let's opt your district out of protecting this pride flag, or whatever the case may be. So when we talk about indoctrination in our schools, again, it doesn't just stop at the state legislature, and it doesn't just stop with school choice. It falls on us, and our children are our most innocent asset. They deserve to be protected at all costs. If we as a Republican Party cannot agree that our kids are our biggest fight, then I don't know where we are as a party. So we have to stand for our kids.
So one thing that I want to point out that's wild to see, again, as someone who was involved in anti-fascist activism in 2016 and 2017 and the first Trump administration, right? It's wild that Darcy is throwing around anti-white racism. And this is not the first time, right? She's kind of repeated this line in other interviews that she's done. And this whole concept of like anti-white racism. In 2016, this was like the fringe identitarian kind of like talking point, right? Everything was just anti-white racism. In 2020, they shifted to like CRT, right? And that was like the cover. Like it's not anti-white racism, it's critical race theory, and there is some nuance, but like just explicitly saying anti-white racism is kind of going mask off. And this is kind of an important thing to sort of pay attention to, especially when next week Jared Taylor is coming to speak in Grand Junction. For those of you who don't have terminal online brainworms, and good for you, truly. Jared Taylor is kind of like the intellectual like grandfather of this whole idea of anti-what racism. He's this very erudite kind of like Southern professor type who goes on about race science and all of these kind of pretty awful things. He ran a conference that attracted a lot of the major players within the American white nationalist scene, American Renaissance. And it had guys from like Identity Europa and Patriot Front and various other shady organizations, right? Anyway, he's coming next week to speak at a college. And, his talking points now, like they have migrated into the mainstream of conservative politics, right? So you have the Colorado GOP chair candidate kind of going on about this idea of anti-white racism, which is, the big pressing issue in America right now. Just wild. We've also got Darcy talking about, illegal immigration, which again, a big topic for the Republican Party. So let's take a listen to that.
So as Director of Special Initiatives last year for the Colorado GOP, I went around the state. You guys keep hearing wet. I went around the state. So I went around the state again, and I talked to all the counties and cities, and I was instrumental and successful in writing policies tailored to their individual counties and cities to declare themselves as non-sanctuary localities. We lost track somewhere around 40 cities and counties. After that, it just continued to grow. That's how we isolate conservative-leaning communities in Colorado to stand up and do the right thing and make some noise and show that Denver and Boulder don't control our state. Just because Denver and Boulder want to be filled with illegals and be a third world hellhole doesn't mean that we in Monument, Castle Rock, Sedalia want to live like that. So we as localities have to stand up. Now I'll take it a step further, and I'm going to sound a little bit extreme for a second. I live in Monument. I've seen illegals in Monument 2 times. They were getting off buses and they were sleeping in a field right by the bus station. It's only happened twice, but that's 2 times too many for me. But I can tell you one thing, I didn't just let it go. Let's just say I made them very uncomfortable. I made the police work harder that day. Everybody in Monument worked a little bit harder that day, and by the end of the day, those illegals were not in Monument. Sure, they shuffled them somewhere else, but guess what? That made all the difference to those Monument residents. It made all the difference to my children, so they're not sleeping in a field by my house anymore. Take them wherever you want. Make the process difficult. Don't make it easy for these people. Make it uncomfortable. And then we're going to have an easier time deporting them. Thank you.
There it is. And it doesn't stop just with immigrants, right? They were also asked about tax reform, and Darcy had this to say about tax money going to schools.
Okay, so starting from square one, we have to elect good conservative Republicans to state and local seats. If we elect good conservative Republicans, by way of closing our primaries, working on the opt-out, and working with those candidates to educate them about what it means to be a conservative, then we won't have as many Republicans sitting on boards and sitting at the legislature and trying to raise our taxes. So when they do raise our taxes, and they will continue to do inevitably, we have to look at, you guys are probably sick of me talking about this, it starts locally, right? So the state legislature is passing all these laws and handing out the money. Where are they sending it? Our localities, our local mayors, our county commissioners, our school boards are just pigs at the trough, just spending that money, because they know Daddy Polis will send more of it the second that the localities ask for it. And one of my biggest pet peeves is these damn MLOs that are all around the state. We have so many Republicans. I watched Republicans in Douglas County last cycle say, well, we have to have this tax increase, it's for the kids. Oh my God, how far we have fallen as a party. I pulled their budget just like I do every time anyone asks for an MLO. There was so much waste in there, it was embarrassing, it was a joke. Go back to the drawing table, tell me where your waste is, and I can tell you where it is. It's in the fat cat administration. Come back to me and tell me that you don't have any more money, and then we can talk about it, but that won't ever happen, because all these localities are doing, especially our school districts, is wasting our money. And if we put a stop to it, it's not going to continue funneling down from the state as much as it has been. So keep an eye on what's happening locally, where the money's coming from. Follow the money.
So yeah, immigrants, schools, trans people, screw them, right? That's the policy of the new Colorado GOP chair, potentially, right? There's some other contenders in this race, though, right? Unfortunately, Brita Horn, who the moderate candidate, if you can call any Republican in 2025 the moderate candidate, but who is, involved with leadership program in the Rockies, as we talked about in the last episode, who has served various positions in her political career. She is also running for GOP chair, right? And she is less of the MAGA, hyper populist. She wants to kind of create a big tent and bring everybody in. She's more about unity and that sort of thing. She is also running, but she wasn't at this Sedalia forum, which, to be honest, I don't really blame her. Douglas County, it does have the population demographics of mayonnaise, and it is, home of the craziest, all the most colorful people in Colorado politics come from Douglas County. Joe Oltman, Brandy Bradley, the guy with the cake thing, wild place. Not really a forum for nuance. It was also hosted by the Colorado Hispanic Republicans, and Darcy is on the board of the Hispanic Republicans, although she did, she has stepped down and is not actively involved, because it'd be a conflict of interest. But, I understand maybe Brita Horn taking a pass on this particular forum, right? And so for a while there, it kind of looked like this race was going to be kind of a match between Darcy Schoening and Brita Horn, right? Kind of MAGA populist versus moderate Republican. But in the last couple weeks, things have gotten insane with Lori Saine, right? The Weld County Commissioner, former Colorado representative, and someone who rose to their position through, a lot of Tea Party activism, right? And look, Lori Saine walked so that Darcy Schoening could run, right? You're kind of seeing the previous generation versus the new generation of these, lady conservative activists. And it's fascinating to watch. Lori Saine, cut from kind of the same MAGA cloth, positions, with Darcy, not radically different. But Saine did take the opportunity to kind of throw some punches during this debate, which was kind of hilarious to watch, right? The first one, she talked about Darcy's attacks on her. So let's take a look at that.
Well, first of all, we should hold our elected officials accountable when they're actually actively being divisive, like Darcy did when she first came out swinging against me and said, I'm not a leader or a doer. Not particularly helpful at all, and I will hold you accountable for that. So we'll start there. But secondly, we do have a lawsuit against the people who started the coup. I think that is important because they took our donor money. They sued Hope and Dave and everyone else personally for doing their job. Can you imagine trying to do your job and getting sued personally? So yes, they should be held accountable on that lawsuit. I will continue that lawsuit. I haven't seen another can up here willing to do that. I will do it. But also, when it comes to peace, there's a great speech by Patrick Henry. Part of it, he references the Bible a lot, and he says, peace, peace, there is no peace. Remember that? The end of the speech was give me liberty or give me death. When the other side of our party says the word unity, that's not what they mean. They mean sit down and shut up. That's what they mean. Right. There's a side of our party that will never stop fighting because they don't have the same motivation we do, which is to give power back to the American people, to give power back to Republicans. And so what you do in those situations, you simply go around them and you continue to do good things. And you create such a vision that people are compelled to follow you with passion and integrity. Thank you.
And that wasn't the only incident during this debate, right? There was also kind of a section where the candidates were asked about Tina Peters, who, strangely enough, has become this kind of political, I don't know, like saint figure for conservatives, right? Like Tina Peters is the political prisoner. She is the martyr for the conservative cause. And what you're seeing with the Colorado GOP chair is all the candidates kind of like falling over themselves to sort of be Tina Peters' like biggest supporter. Darcy does have kind of a credible kind of claim to that. She did discuss some of the things that she's done. She's been involved with as a member of the Colorado Party, trying to get the Trump administration to put pressure on the state of Colorado to pardon Tina Peters somehow. So here's Darcy talking about that.
So I have worked with Tina since day one. I used to speak for her when she was running for Secretary of State, and she has been an important part of our party. To that end, I did call on Pam Bondi. I contacted Pam Bondi and the Trump administration directly, and I said, we need to put pressure on Polis to pardon Tina Peters. And we need to look into the corrupt judge, Judge Barrett, who sentenced her. Her sentence was extraordinarily long based upon the accusations. 7 days later, they did come back and say, we are investigating this. We do now know that Phil Weiser is pushing back. I'm going to continue to get on the news and make a lot of noise about it and continue to pressure Polis and bring all the Republicans in the state around Tina Peters so that we can continue to expose what a horrible situation she's in and get her out.
But Lori Saine, not to be outdone, took exception of Darcy's kind of use of Tina Peters and tried to maybe take some kind of like high road on this. Let's take a look at that.
Let's be clear about something because the media is spinning this. The judge made it very clear he was punishing Tina Peters for exercising her First Amendment rights regarding elections. If he can do that, if that can happen to Tina Peters, it will happen to you. And first of all, you should not use Tina Peters as a political pawn without asking her first and her legal team. I'm actually actively working with her legal team. And blackmailing a judge, and the governor does one thing and makes them dig their heels in. I'm very afraid if we have a certain person to cheer, that Tina will stay in jail, and she is deteriorating very fast. So I'm trying to work to rectify that situation the right way. She needs to be free, regardless. Everybody I've talked to, even Democrats, agree that she shouldn't be in jail right now with all these violent offenders and being strip searched every single day. And I'm going to make sure I fight as hard as I can in the right way that she wants me to fight to get her out of jail as soon as possible.
So yeah, getting a little feisty at the GOP chair debate. And this has also kind of spilled over into other realms, a bunch of other people. Trent Lizzie, who ran for Congress an election ago unsuccessfully, and Joe Oltmann have also weighed in because they're both plugged into the whole Tina Peters situation. Some people have suggested that maybe Lori Saine was lying about being in touch with Tina Peters' lawyers and trying to help out. It's a whole thing, right? Quite a mess. In addition to Lori Saine, we have a couple also rans, right? Those lovable losers who aren't gonna win and will probably drop out in the first round of voting at the assembly, but they're there. God bless them. And those include, probably most notably, and maybe it's wrong of me to call former Representative Richard Holtorf an also ran, but he's kind of jumping into this thing a little bit late. He does have good name recognition. Republicans know him. I remember him fondly from the Capitol and calling everyone godless heathens. But he's a former Army helicopter pilot, chill dude, outside of the political sphere. I don't know if he's got the juice to make it through the chair, especially with Lori and Darcy. They're kind of potentially going to suck all the oxygen out of the room, I think. But we'll see, right? So you got State Rep Richard Holtorf, who also wasn't at this candidate forum. And then you have El Paso County's Jeremy Goodall. And he's an interesting guy, nice. He worked with Protect Kids Colorado, which ran the unsuccessful ballot measure last year, trying to target trans kids and trans medicine and all of these things. So here's a clip from him talking about that.
So when it comes to education and school choice, I don't have to deal with this in a theoretical fashion. My wife founded the first charter school in Colorado. They were the third charter school in the nation. They were the first to document their process. And through that, my wife, we added it up a couple months back talking about it. She's influenced the education of almost like 1.5 to 2.5 million students last year. This is how we do it, is not waiting for other people to show it. In my family, we see a problem, we address it directly. Sometimes that's picking up the phone, sometimes that's filing paperwork, arguing with the state, getting funding dragged out of the school district, and putting up a school. I don't know what else to tell you on that. As a charter board member of Protect Kids Colorado, protecting our kids, getting involved in, and actually I worked with Darcy this last cycle. She was actually a co-proponent with my own father, I made that introduction, on the stopping sex changes and bringing medical practices of sex change off the table. We have avenues, and we must be creative and not limit ourselves to just traditional avenues of approach and traditional solutions. The world allows you to just do stuff. And if we take our blinders off and we get a little bit creative, there's no stopping what we can do as a cohesive, aggressive, or assertive force.
And there we go. Those are your Colorado Republican chair candidates. They're doing some more debates. They've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm sure it will be a whole process, and then eventually they will have the assembly and they will vote, and there can only be one. We will see how it shakes out, and you folks certainly will be the first to know. If you appreciate our reporting, our willingness to drive to Sedalia on a weeknight to cover these kind of events, please please consider making a tax-deductible donation to our nonprofit newsroom. You can go to coloradotimesrecorder.com to make that donation and to see more of our reporting. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and leave us a silly comment for the algorithm. Whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on, please, like us and subscribe, drop us a review, whatever it is you can do. Tell your friends. Let's try to grow the channel and the podcast. Until next time, stay safe out there.